I was 31 years old. I was an ordinary businessman in Birmingham, Alabama, married to the most wonderful woman in the world. But one morning, I just began to notice that something was different about her. She was just becoming sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And then I noticed one morning that she got up at the same time I did, which was a little unusual, propped herself up in bed and started reading her Bible. As I was getting dressed, she looked at me and she said, "Bailey, if you died right now, what would happen to you?" Well, I wasn't expecting a question like that, and I gave her some silly answer. I don't even know what it was. But going to work that morning, I was driving along in the car by myself, and I said, "What is she talking about and what's going on?" Now, I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and every good little boy is supposed to go to church on Sunday morning, which we did. But I did not know how to have a relationship with Jesus. And a couple of weeks later, I walked in the house one Friday evening and she met me at the door and said, "Would you do me a favor?" And I said, "Of course I will." "What?" And she said, "Take me to a Bible class tonight." I had never attended an activity outside of the church. And this was something entirely new for me. And I was scared to death. And we got in our car and drove up, and I said hello when I arrived, I said goodbye when I left, and between the hello and the goodbye, my life was totally transformed because I learned that evening how I could have a personal relationship with God through His Son, Jesus Christ. And the Lord just immediately changed my life. He gave me a tremendous hunger for His Word. My motives began to change. I was very selfish. I may still be somewhat, but hopefully not anywhere near as much then. And I was excited about this new change in my life, but one Friday night we were at Bible class and they said, "Next week a group of people from Campus Crusade for Christ are coming to town and teach us how to share our faith in Christ." Well, I wasn't real excited about that. Everybody else in the class seemed to be jumping up and down except me, and we went to the training and I got less enthused. And in fact, I just rejected everything that they said. And they told us that we were going out to share our faith on Sunday afternoon, and I told Elizabeth, I said, "You can go, I'm not going." And I refused to go. Well, Elizabeth didn't go because I didn't go. Well, she was quite miserable, and I was miserable, but I wouldn't admit it. And so she got together with some of her friends and she started going out and sharing her faith with others in the neighborhood and what have you. And I just became more miserable. And then the Lord was very gracious and He brought that same group of people back to Birmingham for the same training. Well, I was there when they opened the doors of the church and they had to sweep me out in the evening. And I was transformed totally at that point, and my life had never been the same since then. And I learned how to communicate my faith in Christ with others, and I even had the privilege of leading 2 people to the Lord. And God just grabbed a hold of my heart, changed my life there on the streets of Birmingham that day, and I've never been the same since then. The greatest joy in my life is to have the privilege of sharing Christ with someone. A couple of months later, on January the 14th, 1965, Elizabeth and I were reading from Isaiah. And the verse, God says, "Who shall I send? Who will go for me?" And Isaiah said, "Lord, here am I, send me." We read it together and said, "Lord, send us." And at that very moment, we knew that we were going to be joining the staff of Campus Crusade for Christ and have had the privilege of being involved with Campus Crusade for Christ for well over 40 years. And if I had ever thought when I met Christ when I was 31 years old that the life that was before me, I'm not sure that I would have been able to stand it. God put us on a mission of being involved in some of the most exciting things that one could possibly imagine.